Board of Elections meeting to order. Mr. Clerk, can we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Clear,
Here.
Mr. Horton,
Here.
Mr. Rastetter. We'll get back to you, Mrs. Rennie,
Here.
Mrs. Showerman. Get back to Mrs. Showerman, Mr. Shank,
Here.
Chairman Anderson.
Here. Okay, now that we have a roll call vote, this portion of our meeting, we have a hearing of the public. Are there any citizens that wish to be heard? You can either go to the participant and raise the hand there, or just raise your hand if you're on video, and I'll recognize you. Cindy Purvis, you have your hand up. I recognize you first, so please go ahead.
I do have a question about Election Day. People that may show up, refuse to wear a mask, what is the procedure?
We do have procedures that there are masks that will be provided at the polling precincts. If somebody shows up without a mask, they will be offered a mask. And if they do not take the mask, then they will be asked to leave the premises.
So all of the judges of elections are aware of this policy?
Yes,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
I'm back, by the way.
Thank you. If you can recognize Board Member Rastetter is in attendance. And any other citizens to be heard? Freda Tepfer, please go ahead.
I appreciate the efforts of the Board of Elections and the staff of the election department. There are, as you know, things that are confusing and complicated. The ink color was confusing to people because one thing says blue or black and other things say black only. But I guess what I think is very important is that the Board of Elections and the Elections Department look for a way of providing public information, coordinating with the public as the, after the polls close or as the polls are closing, and given the lawsuits going around, that there be some kind of regular communication, not just the one count that may occur before 11 p.m. and nothing until the following Friday, that there be actual updates to the public because of all the high level of concern in this election and the various lawsuits and other things. But I thank you all for your efforts.
Thank you for that. And I just wanted to clarify with the question that Mrs. Purvis asked. And I spoke a little quickly, that if somebody comes to the polls without a mask, they will be offered a mask. If they refuse to take the mask, we cannot deny them, if they are a voter, the right to vote, even if they don't have a mask on. However, if they then vote, they will immediately be asked to leave the voting location if they refuse to take a mask. So they will still have the option to vote, or the opportunity to vote. We cannot deny them that. So I just wanted to make sure I clarified that. Thank you. Any other citizens to be heard? Jim Wirtz, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to first, I know that there is an item on the agenda tonight, resolution number 3, regarding polling place conduct and rules, and I'm grateful for those rules that are outlined there, and look forward passage. I also wanted to inquire as to the board's knowledge about the letter that was sent to Erie City Chief of Police Dan Spitzarni and Erie County Sheriff John Loomis, and CCing the clerk's office, among others, including the district attorney, from the Institute for Constitutional Advocacy and Protection at the Georgetown University Law Center. As you know, I've raised before you before concerns about kind of paramilitary activity at polling sites, and my concerns about voter intimidation related to open carry at voting locations in Erie County. The letter pretty clearly states that that paramilitary activity is not protected under the Second Amendment, and it also lays out a pretty clear legal case for the restraining of paramilitary activity, or the prohibition of paramilitary activity at polling sites on election day as a form of voter intimidation. And so I'm asking if the board is at this time or at another time going to consider the suggestions or the potential legal ramifications raised in that letter related to voter intimidation in next Tuesday's election.
Thank you. Let me just comment on that to the extent that we will have further discussion, so board members can participate later in the meeting. But I will say that I myself, and I believe most or all of the board, received that letter on this past Saturday. Whether or not they choose to take action on that letter, it was not received in a timely manner to be a part of the agenda or under consideration at this meeting. So there may be members that would like to choose to have discussion on that. We will be taking up issues that we believe are reasonable and a moderate approach to solving those problems, while still keeping within the means of people's constitutional rights, while not violating others' rights. But that will be a part of the discussion as well. So I'll just stop there with that explanation until other members of the board can participate in the discussion later in the meeting.
Thank you, Chairman.
You're welcome. Any other citizens to be heard? Chelsea Alcorn, please go ahead.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a question. I think this is more directed towards Doug. After I had done a little bit of a tour of how things were going to be set up in the voter registration office to count ballots after starting on next Tuesday and moving forward. And I asked about what would happen with the paper ballots after they were scanned, where they went. And I was told that you guys were going to get some lock boxes or something to go in the back corner of the elections office. And I was just wondering if there was an update on where those were, because I voted in person last week and they were not there. So I'm just wondering what's happening with those.
Yeah, again, that will be part of the discussion of the policies and procedures that we're putting into place. But I can tell you that we have all of the ballots together, separated by ward and district in one room under lock and key. So yes, it has been set aside, not necessarily in one lockbox, but in one room, locked and separated by ward and district.
I mean, after the ballots are scanned, like the mail ballots and the paper ballots that come in after election day.
Yeah, they will be, once they're scanned, they will be then put back in that locked room until the time of the final certification of the ballot. And then they would be put into storage for 2 years. So they'll be, once scanned, put back in that same locked room and kept separated by ward and district. Okay. Any other citizens to be heard? Ms. Purvis, you have another question?
I do, concerning the same question about the locked box. So they're going into storage. Where is this? See, we were under the impression that they were going into a big safe to be locked. So if they're going into storage, where is it and what's the security around that storage? Has that been decided yet?
Once the election is finalized, we do have a secure storage facility off-site that we do not disclose to people where it is because it is a secure site. But that's where any ballots that are sent and the envelopes are stored for 2 years after the election, once the election has been certified to be complete. So from the time period of the end of election day until the certification of the ballot, there could be challenges, there could be asked for recounts. So they're kept in the locked room, if you want to call that the safe. The room is the locked safe within the voter registration and county council offices. They are kept there until those time periods for challenges and recounts are complete. And then they are sent for storage to our secured facility offsite and kept for at least 2 years. Okay, any other questions or comments from the public? Any other citizens to be heard? Any other citizens to be heard? One last time, any other citizens to be heard? Okay, hearing none, we'll move forward. Each member of the board has received a copy of the minutes from our previous meeting of October 15th. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
The motion was moved by Board Member Horton and seconded by Board Member Schenk. Are there any questions or corrections or discussion of the minutes? Seeing and hearing none, can we have a roll call of Mr. Clerk?
On the approval of minutes, Mrs. Clear,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. Rastetter,
Yes.
Mrs. Rennie,
Yes.
Mrs. Showerman, Mr. Schenk,
Yes.
Let me just say, Mrs. Showerman was having some computer difficulty, and she will be joining us again in the meeting shortly.
and Chairman Anderson.
Yes. Thank you. We have on our agenda tonight board action to be considered under number 5. Under number 5A, we have resolution 2, which is a resolution for the adoption of the rules for pre-canvassing and canvassing of absentee and mail-in ballots. That resolution was tabled on 10/15. Vice Chair Rennie. No, go ahead, Vice Chair Rennie.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I move to untable resolution number 2, the adoption of rules for pre-canvassing and canvassing of absentee mail and mail-in ballots.
I second.
The motion was made by Vice Chair Rennie and seconded by Board Member Horton. Are there any questions or comments about bringing this off the table? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. Rastetter,
Yes.
Mrs. Rennie,
Yes.
Mrs. Showerman,
Yes.
Mr. Schenk,
Yes.
Mrs. Clear,
Yes.
Chairman Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Showerman, may I put you down as a yes for the minutes?
Yes, you may. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome.
Thank you. Now that we have resolution 2 off the table, we can take that into consideration.
Mr. Chairman, I move
Vice Chairwoman Rennie.
that we accept resolution number 2 as it reads.
Thank you. Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Seeing no second being made to the resolution, the resolution 2 would die without having a second to move it forward. So let's move on to item B, which is resolution 3, the rules and regulations of the Erie County Board of Elections. Vice Chairwoman Rennie.
Mr. Chairman, I wondered if you wanted to have any discussion on this. I'm prepared to make the motion to accept resolution number 3.
Yes, if you motion and there's a second, then we will begin discussion on
Thank you.
resolution 3. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept resolution number 3.
Second.
Resolution 3 has been, a motion has been made by Vice Chairwoman Rennie and seconded by Board Member Clear. I would entertain now discussion of resolution 3, and may I first ask our solicitor, Talarico, who we thank him for the work that he's done on cleaning up the language and making sure that what we're putting forward conforms with all of the election code of Pennsylvania and the mandates that have come down from the state, even most recently up into this past weekend. And many of these are following along with the mandates that are brought down from the state. So Attorney Talarico, if you have any comments, we would appreciate those.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before commenting on the exhibits that are before you, there is one very important issue that the board should consider and may involve an amendment to the resolution that's before you. And it has to do with the basis upon which you can challenge absentee and mail-in ballots. I have spoken to some other election boards in the Commonwealth over the last couple of days, and including Philadelphia, and some other organizations that have tried to interpret all of these guidances that have come down from Secretary Boockvar. And if you read the last two, which are the most important, her September 28th and October 6th guidances, which are supposed to reflect, and they do reflect, the decisions made by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. There is a question as to the limitations upon which watchers and others may challenge an absentee ballot and write in mail-in ballot. At this point, if you look at the Exhibit A and the rules for pre-canvassing, if you drop down to number 5, you'll see that voters who are in the polling place and election officials and poll watchers may challenge a voter's right to vote. Challenges may be limited to the voter's identity and residency. However, for pre-canvassing purposes, challenges to a ballot have to occur not later than 5 o'clock on the Friday before the election. That would be this Friday. So that's one reason that you don't want to necessarily put all of the votes in a vault or all the write-ins in a vault, because watchers and others with certificates have the authority under the election law to file challenges against those applications and mail-in and absentee ballots through this week and not later than 5 o'clock on Friday. The good news about that means that at the polls next Tuesday, there will be no challenges to mail-in and absentee ballots. They will be limited to challenges made to in-person voters. Now, at this point, that means that we would have to amend in order to bring what I just discussed into one of the rules to make sure that our staff in pre-canvassing rejects challenges on any basis that are made after 5 o'clock on Friday. And that the only time they consider challenges to the identity and residency of a mail-in ballot voter would be this week prior to 5 p.m. this Friday. That's the proposed amendment that I would like to make. I could dictate the language, but it would affect number 5 under pre-canvassing of mail-in and absentee ballots. And it would also affect the watcher rules, the pre-canvassing watcher rules, because that would limit them to making objections prior to 5 p.m. this Friday and eliminate their right to make objections throughout the pre-canvassing process. Those would be the 2 amendments that I think the board should consider.
Which number, Attorney Talarico, which number under C, the pre-canvassing, would that be?
Actually, it would be still under A. Still under A, the 3rd page, where it says pre-canvassing watcher rules. Paragraph 7 would change.
Okay, I have that listed as Exhibit A, but number C, 7. Is that correct?
Oh, okay, that's correct. That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and Attorney Talarico, just for clarification, this was clarified and brought down under a state court, I guess, ruling that came down on Saturday, this past Saturday?
No, it was the original Supreme Court decision that came down, I think September 27th, I think the date was.
Okay.
But this is also pursuant to Secretary Bookfar's guidance dated September 28th and the Secretary's guidance dated October 6th. Both say the same thing substantively, but they say it a little different.
And what would your suggested change of language be for A5 and C7?
Okay, so for A5, it would be the following. Challenges to absentee and mail-in ballots shall be limited to the elector's identification and residency, comma, and shall be made not later than 5 p.m. on the Friday before the election.
Okay, and that would be the language under both of those.
Under 5.
Under A5, and then would it be the same language under C7 or?
Well, getting back to A5, that would be a substitute for the first 2 sentences. And the other sentences that are there, the second sentence is fine. And
So
that's simply,
beginning with challenges shall be limited to?
no, the next sentence.
Okay, a voter's eligibility. Okay.
All of that is fine. It's clear, not only from the Supreme Court decision, but from the federal court decision in Pittsburgh, that signature analysis, comparing signatures in mail-in ballots, or for that matter, comparing signatures at all, are not a basis for a challenge. Now, the other language that would change, Exhibit A, Section C7, that would change to the following. watchers may not challenge an absentee or mail-in ballot during the pre-canvass or canvass of the ballots. So in other words, all of this pre-canvass stuff has to be done by this Friday, and it's not an issue at the polls.
Okay, let me stop you there and ask if there are any questions or comments from members of the board for Clerk Smith or Attorney Talarico.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Smith, go ahead.
just one, just to make sure I've got it correct. On A5, challenges to absentee or mail-in ballots are to be limited to the electors blank and residency. What was that first one?
Identification,
Thank you.
and it shall be limited.
Shall be. Thank you.
Any other clarification, Mr. Smith?
And lastly, on C7, what you dictated is going to replace the entire C7 section that's currently there.
In addition to that, Doug, it would be
Okay.
after the dictation, comma, instead of period. And then you could finish it off with the rest of the language. It's already in 7 that begins with, nor may any poll watcher challenge a voted ballot, mail-in or absentee ballot based upon signature analysis.
Got it.
Okay, thank you. Solicitor Talarico, any other comments or clarifications for us?
No, that would be it on the amendments. There are some, I assume that the board might want to discuss the conduct at the polling place.
Yes.
And-
Please go ahead.
Okay. So that letter that was brought up by the Democratic County Chairman, that really isn't that relevant to our consideration. The election board is interested in trying to pull off a fair and safe election. It's not in the business of punishing or and perhaps even preventing crime, or criminal acts, but that really is for law enforcement. And that letter that was received from Georgetown University, it really has to do with longstanding criminal laws under federal law and state law, which are obviously applicable, but it's really not our business. So what I have done is crafted some language that tries to reach a balance between a person's right to carry a gun and the right of others to be free of any kind of intimidation or fear at the polls. And so what I did is I took the same language that requires police officers to remain 100 feet away from the polling place, and I applied it to individuals who I called open carry voters, that they too, except for voting, would have to remain 100 feet from the polling place. I then, and this would be kind of, in a sense, incorporating that letter that was received from Washington by suggesting that no group of open carry voters, meaning 2 or more, shall gather or congregate at any polling place or drop off box location. So that would account for, let's say you have a number of people carrying guns at a polling place, even 100 feet away. We would take the position that they have to disperse. And if not, the election board, or excuse me, the judges of the election should call the sheriff to assist in removing them.
Okay,
Individuals, individual open carriers that are not associated with the group or anything. I don't know why you'd want to hang around, but they would have to stay 100 feet away.
okay, so let me clarify that the letter that was sent, that the discussion of the letter, although it might have relevancy to the law itself, it actually is talking about potentially something of a criminal nature, which, as you said, the election board is not in the business of enforcing criminal procedures, but they would already fall under some existing law that law enforcement would then interpret or enforce. And so it's really already covered and doesn't have a need for this Board of Election to take it further.
That's what I believe, Mr. Chairman. That letter really deals with the situation that's already lost. It's already escalated, and it's already gone beyond the election board's ability to prevent it. And then, of course, law enforcement would get involved. And as I said, we're more concerned with keeping the peace at the election poll the best we can.
Okay, thank you. There's just 2 words in here that I would like to suggest change in the conduct at the polling places under number 3 and 4. And then if they appear anyplace else, it says, unless in the exercise of his privilege. And I would just suggest that we change that word to their privilege, and not having a word as if it's a male or female dominated, but that it's includes all persons, using the word their instead of his. And then any place else that I've missed in this, I would suggest we change that. But I think those are the only 2 places. Are there any questions or comments from members of the board? Vice Chairwoman Rennie.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a point of clarification. Under Exhibit A, number 2, no envelope shall contain any text, mark, or symbol which reveals the identity of the elector, etc. And this is a question that came up, I believe, by Councilwoman Clear. Part of the pre-canvassing is the checking of names against the voter lists. And I wondered how or if this has any application towards that part of pre-canvassing. It would be preferable if we could complete that portion prior to Election Day, but I don't know what the ruling is on that.
Well, there is no, there's still a bill that was outstanding and passed by the House, supported by the governor, but no action has been taken by the Senate to expand the time of the pre-canvass. So we cannot pre-canvass, and it doesn't look like that there's going to be any further action taken on that. So we're taking the stance that there'll be no pre-canvassing earlier than 7 a.m. on Election Day, which checking someone's name off would be a part of that pre-canvass. So we couldn't bring that until Election Day. The difference between the marking of, or any marks on the ballot and or the envelope and checking them off in the polling book is that the envelopes will then be sent to the next group of people to then separate the outer envelope from the secrecy envelope. And then the secrecy envelope will be sent to the next group to then separate the ballot itself from the secrecy envelope. So the chances that somebody is going to know, who that person is that has that ballot diminishes, if not is completely non-existent as it moves down the assembly line. But the purpose of this particular item is not to have anything permanently on the envelope. And is there anything further, Doug, that you want to say about that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I would ask that in Exhibit A2 that we add the word secrecy before envelope. That is the envelope in question. That's the one that should not contain any marks. The outer envelope, of course, is the declaration, and that most certainly has a signature on it. So we might want to have the amendment include the addition of the word secrecy there.
So no secrecy envelope shall contain any text.
That's correct, sir. And one other item, we did check off names in the primary, and that was because we didn't have all of the ballots scanned into the SURE system. We believe that we will have all the ballots will be pre-canvassing on election day will in fact have been scanned into SURE. So it is our hope that we will be dispensing with that particular activity and simply opening envelopes and moving them down the assembly line as you discussed.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Vice Chairwoman Rennie, for that, catching that. Any other comments or questions from members of the board? Board
Chairman
Member
Anderson?
Schenk. Yes, sir.
Thank you. My question is for our solicitor, Mr. Tallarico. Now, I see this 100-foot language. Now, what happens in public access when you were 15, 20 feet from a public sidewalk? What authority does the deputy sheriff, because I do say deputy because it won't be the sheriff himself probably out there, but one of the deputies, to remove that person from a public walkway? As a guy that's been in law enforcement, I'm just not seeing a bite or a statute that has the authority to physically remove them from public access sidewalk outside of a building that we're leasing or renting or utilizing for voting. That's just my question is, are we putting these deputies out there to enforce a rule that has no bite legally to remove somebody? That's my question for you, sir.
Well, that's a very good question. Again, we all know that everybody has the right to carry a gun in Pennsylvania. We know that. And so treading upon, a person's right to carry a firearm is very sensitive. Perhaps someday it won't be quite so sensitive. But for the time being, we have to acknowledge that. I'm sure that there are many people out there that would simply say, would be prepared to pass a law that says no guns at polling places.
Correct.
So what I've tried to do is just temper things so that, we don't prejudice or violate the rights of an open carrier person who's abiding by the law, but simply within our right as the election board, under the election code, put them on notice that we're presuming that if they're going to hang around with guns and too close to within 100 feet of the entrance to the poll, that they're intimidating. They have the effect of intimidating voters. Now, as far as putting a bite into it, the gun, open carrier people would have to file a lawsuit. So yeah.
Oh, go ahead, sir. I'm sorry.
Okay, so what we're doing is we're passing a resolution. That is, the board is passing a resolution, and they're handing it off to the sheriff and telling the sheriff what we want him to do. The sheriff works for the courthouse. as you know. He doesn't work for the city of Erie Police or the state troopers. He works for the Erie County Courthouse, including the election board. And so we're handing a task off to him to say, look, we want to make sure that everybody that goes to vote feels comfortable and is not threatened. And yet we do not want to prevent people that carry guns not to vote. We want them to vote as well. So I've come up with this compromise, so to speak, that allows people to go in and out of the polling place with their guns. But if they're going to hang around, we're saying you can't be 10 feet away with electioneering and with a gun. That if you're going to have a gun, you got to go 100 feet away.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. I understand the physical signs. That's not a constitutional issue either. I mean, the Second Amendment is pretty solid. It's been tested 1,000 times. I mean, I personally got into a thing with the city of Erie. We challenged their ordinance, and it was thrown out by the Supreme Court because there was no bite. And I'm worried about my deputies, that they're going to be out on the sidewalk confronting somebody, and it's going to be a philosophical push and shove over the law on this deal. I mean, the county is going to start to bear some of that liability. And then I got to be honest with you, the lawsuit that I was involved with, we did file a civil suit against the city of Erie, and it stood because they did violate the civil rights of the citizens to carry a firearm on a city property, which was not the police department. It was just a city property. They said you couldn't do that. So I'm worried about the liability and the safety of our deputies out there trying to enforce at best hey, this is what we want you to do deal, where there's no bite. There's no legal binding to make those deputies remove them from a public sidewalk. Correct me if I'm wrong. You're the attorney. I'm just the ex-cop. I'm just looking at it from both sides of the street.
Yeah, well, and so have I. And the sheriff will have authority to remove those people. And once again, just like you did with in filing a lawsuit against the city, so too may some open carrier people file a suit against the county. That's very possible. But there's a big difference, a vast difference between guns at polling sites and walking around in the public with a gun.
Right. And I guess the semantics of my statement, I guess the essence of what I'm trying to say is a public access, a sidewalk is going to be within that 100-foot rule, a guideline. It's a guideline at best of that 100-foot rule. It would, trust me, as soon as this gets out, someone will challenge it. I'd bet you lunch. Someone will challenge this.
So it's up to the board.
Right.
I myself would say bring it on.
Right.
But aside from that, 100 feet is 100 feet, and it goes through trees.
Right.
Okay. It's just a barrier, and it goes in a circle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an easement, so to speak, that the people who own the property have given the Board of Elections for the purpose of allowing people to vote at their place.
Right. And
So
again,
there's not going to be an issue with that. The issue is an open carrier who's told to stay 100 feet away, arguing that he's being discriminated against, that he should be able to stay 10 feet away and electioneer rather than 100 feet away. And that's his Second Amendment right.
correct. Now, the second part of my question is, are we setting up our deputies for a civil lawsuit if this is challenged? If they're sued civilly for a violation of their Second Amendment?
Well, that doesn't cost anything.
Sir, I beg to differ with you. If a deputy is sued civilly, does the county pick up the tab for that if they're sued in civil court?
The sheriffs are insured.
Okay.
The sheriffs are insured under that act. But
Okay.
what I'm saying though is a lawsuit to enforce a civil right is not a lawsuit for money.
Well, okay.
That's
I mean, it
nobody's
can be. Sure, we did. We sued the city of Erie for a number for that, and it stuck because
Brian, I'm not aware of any kind of money exchanging hands in that lawsuit.
Okay.
I mean, you'd have to prove that you were somehow monetarily injured. And aside from that, like maybe if somebody gets punched in the mouth and they break their jaw,
Okay.
That would be legitimate, something like that. But in the absence, if it's just a theoretical or ideological argument, there aren't any money damages. And that particular issue probably would not be covered under the CCAP insurance policy for liability for our sheriffs.
I just don't want our deputies put in harm's way. I don't want our deputies put in liable harm's way. I don't want the county, but my essence is to make sure that the deputies are safe, of course. But thank you. Like I said, I was just questioning.
Yeah, I agree. I'm glad we had this discussion because everyone should understand that this is a little different. We are sticking our necks out a little bit.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Schenk. Board Member Clear, you had your hand up?
I did, yes. I actually was just going to make a suggestion to that. Can we use the verb loitering? To Brian's point too, you know, walking a sidewalk or standing on a sidewalk, and loitering is different than using the sidewalk. I don't know if that would help at all. It was just a suggestion of semantics, I guess.
Well, Kim, loitering already is against the law. So if anybody's loitering with or without a gun, they got to move. So, I thought the less said, the better.
Got it. Okay. Good idea. Sometimes less is more, right, Tom?
Right.
Yeah, so in bringing this forward, the real purpose of it was not to try and overstep existing laws that are already in place, and not to try and create new law, but to, I guess, for lack of a better word, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And if military and law enforcement who are potentially a perceived authoritative threat of intimidation at the polls, because the election code only speaks to them in this particular instance. If they have to be 100 feet away, it would not be unreasonable or unrealistic for anyone else who chooses to be at the polls and carry a firearm to have that same distance in place. And that's all of this was just a guidance to the judge of elections in particular, and the workers at the polls, to give them some reassurance that you know, they have a guidance if people continue to come into the polls and question the fact that somebody's standing outside of the poll with a gun. Some people may say this person needs to be removed immediately. We're not taking that stance. We're not taking that right away from them to be there or to open carry. We're just suggesting that they should have the same parameter distance away as the election code specifies for military or law enforcement. Any other questions or comments from the members of the board? Vice Chairwoman Rennie, may I suggest to you, would you be open to the amendments that have been presented as friendly amendments to your motion for the approval of Resolution 3? And that would include the item A5, the changed language, item C7, the changed language, and then item A2, including the word secrecy before envelope in the first sentence. And then in Exhibit B, the conduct at the polling places, in number 3 and 4, adding the word or replacing the word there where the word his. So instead of his privilege, their privilege is in there.
She's muted.
You're muted.
Sorry, I see that. Yes, I would regard those as, I think you put it, friendly changes.
Yeah.
I don't see those as anything that would change the content of the motion.
Okay, would you make a motion to accept those as friendly amendments as a motion to have them included?
Yes, I will. Mr. Chairman, I move to accept the amendments as proposed to the resolution as friendly changes, friendly amendments to the motion.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion to amend by Vice Chair Rennie and seconded by Board Member Clear. Are there any questions or comments about the amendment? If none, Mr. Clerk, could we have a roll call vote to accept the amendments?
Mrs. Rennie,
Yes.
Mrs. Showerman,
Yes.
Mr. Shank,
Yes.
Mrs. Clear,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. Rastetter,
Yes.
Chairman Anderson.
Yes. And if there's no other comments or questions, could we have a roll call vote, Mr. Clerk, on Resolution 3 as amended?
Mrs. Showerman,
Yes.
Mr. Shank,
Yes.
Mrs. Clear,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. Rastetter,
Yes.
Mrs. Rennie,
Yes.
Chairman Anderson.
Yes. Okay, thank you for that. And we will make sure, one of the reasons that we wanted to have our meeting today was to make sure that the policies and procedures that we passed today would be included in the packets that will be sent to the Judge of Elections beginning on Friday. So thank you for that. And Solicitor Talarico, thank you very much for the work that you did in all of that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is the board, I mean, I think that the changes that you just voted on right now should be published to the public as well. So that the public knows some of these rules. I'm sure that they aren't that familiar with them. And even to the point of taking out a notice in the newspaper. Not necessarily all of them, but there's some. I think that a lot of people are confused about challenges. And a lot of people have different ideas about it, that they think it's a lot more than it really is. And maybe just by publishing some kind of notice about the rules and what they can expect might be a good idea. That's entirely up to the board.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I would accept a motion from someone to have the expenditure and the instruction to our clerk to do such a public notice.
I'll make that motion. That's a great idea. Thank you, Mr. Talarico.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion proposed by Board Member Shank and seconded by Board Member Showerman to expend the money and make public notice of the policies and changes of Resolution 3 that we passed today. Are there any questions or comments from members of the board? Seeing none, could we have a roll call vote, Mr. Clerk?
Mr. Shank,
Yes.
Mrs. Clear,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. Rastetter,
Yes.
Mrs. Rennie,
Yes.
Mrs. Showerman,
Yes.
Chairman Anderson.
Yes. Next on our agenda, Mr. Clerk, would you like to give us an update to the election as we are now a week away and the time has now passed for people to apply for a mail-in or absentee ballot? Would you give us an update, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As of earlier today, we had 57,317 mail-in or absentee applications. We've received back so far 37,098. I expect that we'll grow those numbers pretty close to 60,000. Of course, ballots have to be returned by Election Day, or at least have a postmark of Election Day or earlier, and arrive in our office by Friday, November 6th. The phones have been very busy with working with people on their absentee and mail-in ballot situations. We've had some who thought they applied but did not apply, and situations such as that. We had a line in the hallway of in-person voting that extended from our office just about 3/4 the way down the hall, almost to planning, for those of you who are familiar. So it was a busy day in that regard as well. We had a very good meeting today with a couple of the group that's going to include our pre-canvassing people, and have worked out some pretty good, I believe, flows for ballots within the room. We'll have room for watchers to sit, and I feel very good about the plan we have in place for pre-canvassing, as well as personnel, which at this number are probably about 16 at any given point, but we have enough that we'll be able to offer relief, and also have substitutes for all the days going forward from election day rather, through the completion of pre-canvassing and canvassing. I think that's all I have for the board at this time.
Mr. Clerk, when you had suggested, and is it still your plan to have the pre-canvassing members sworn in? Was it your intent that the pre-canvassing board be sworn in? We did pass by resolution here declaring the Board of Elections the pre-canvassing committee. But is it your intention to have sworn in the workers that are going to be working beginning the morning of Election Day, or additionally the members of the pre-canvassing board?
Actually, Judge Trusilla will be at the room at 7 a.m. to swear in all the folks that are helping us pre-canvass. That would also include any board members. As board members come and go, and I'm assuming we'll work out a schedule for Election Day and beyond, we would want to schedule in those members at the time of their arrival. That could be done by a notary or a judge. So yes to your second question.
Okay, it was the 7 a.m. thing that had me most concerned about, having to have the members of the board here. So it's your intention to swear in the members of the committee who are working at 7 a.m. But board members who are members of the pre-canvassing board can be sworn in as they arrive. Is that correct? Just for a clarification.
I would say so. I would even wonder if being a member of the Board of Elections, it is even required for you to be sworn. As a duty of your office, you already have a statutory set of duties and requirements that you perform in a certain way. I'll have a discussion with Solicitor Talarico on that point.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was getting at with if we pass by resolution making us the members of the board. I'm trying to figure out any way not to have to be up at 7 a.m.
I don't think it won't be necessary for the board members to be present for a swearing. I don't think that would be necessary at all. As members of the
Usually
board,
there's times that I could be going to bed at 7 a.m. So
I believe the election code envisions swearing for civilian members
for the committee, right?
of local boards and that sort of thing. As official and seated members of the election board, you've already been sworn in actually as county council members. And in effect, this is one of your duties. And so you've already taken that oath when you were sworn into office.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any comments? Is that complete your report then?
Yes, we're feeling very good about everything in general. We believe we're going to have a very successful election day. That doesn't mean that we won't have challenges all day long in the small C, but we'll be ready. And we've had some classes conducted, some small ones by Mrs. Williams for some newer members of polling teams, but we feel very good about where we are at this time.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any comments or questions from members of the board?
Just great job, everyone.
One quick comment.
You,
Board Member Schenk?
Mr. Smith, do me a small favor. Don't forget to breathe, sir. You gotta breathe.
No doubt.
Solicitor Talarico? Did you have a comment?
no, I did not. I could say goodnight to everybody.
Thank you. I just want to say that Erie County, the citizens of Erie County, the voters of Erie County, and I know that we as the election board of Erie County are very proud of the job that the members of our staff and the election office are conducting in this election on behalf of all of the citizens of Erie County, and particularly the voters. The dedication that they have is second to none. And we appreciate that dedication, and we appreciate the work and the effort that has gone in to this election. It's never easy. And of course, as Doug said, there's always challenges. We'll accept them with a small c. But the important thing is that the election board and the election staff does not bury their head in the sand. If we have a problem, we attack it head on and we solve it, and we get to a fair conclusion and work on behalf of everybody in Erie County. And this election is across the country is all about the presidential race, but every single person who is on the ballot, that particular race is the most important race in the country to them. And we remain fair across the board for all of the candidates who are on the ballot, for the members of their campaigns, the people that have been working so hard for them, and the people that support them and come out and vote for them. So this election board recognizes that, and we do it in a fair and open manner. So I applaud the members of the board for that. So I thank you for all the work that's been done. Board Member Clear.
Yes, and I guess along that same line, I really would like to acknowledge the work that you as chairman of the board and Councilwoman Rennie as vice chairwoman. I honestly, the amount of hours you have put into this and what you have done in order to, I guess, front these challenges with a small c before we even have them. So I cannot thank you two enough. I know how much you've been doing and the conversations that you've been having and the research as well. And it all came to fruition. I think most of it came through to fruition with Attorney Talarico's resolution today, which was excellent. And I think that it's going to make us safe here in Erie County. And I know we are under the microscope around the United States. Erie County is. So we got to do it right. And I want to commend you, Chairman Anderson, and Vice Chairman Rennie and Attorney Talarico. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We appreciate it. Vice Chairwoman Rennie.
In that same vein, I wanted to recognize everyone in elections, including Mr. Smith and Attorney Talarico and you, Mr. Chairman. it's been a phenomenal job pulling this together so that it will work as seamlessly as we can possibly make it, and as safely and as fairly as it can be done. And I really have to commend everyone who has worked, regardless of party affiliation, to make this process one with integrity. So thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I have kidded with some of the reporters that have contacted me and said, you've got to understand that none of this is black and white. It's all gray, and it's nothing but organized chaos. But somehow in the end, it all pulls together, and the people in America recognize that the voice of America has spoken through their election process. And that's when it all comes together and works. So all of us play our role in that, but most importantly, the voters count. We respect the voters, we respect you, and we respect that each and every vote counts, and your vote will count in Erie County, and we applaud everybody involved for that. So with that being said, with no other business bring before the board, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Good night,
job,
everyone.
everybody.
Good night, everybody. Be safe.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Nicole, do you want me to stay on?